Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlawn Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlawn Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
And welcome back. Access to Democracy returns. I'm Alan Miller, and we have a first-time guest. Hard for me to believe it's his first time here as a guest, but the Commissioner of Transportation, Charles Zelle, and he really likes to be known as Charlie.
Charlie's good.
We're going to go with that right from the outset. And an individual who probably has had more press in his first year as a commissioner than anybody, probably rivaling the governor even, because of so many things transportation-wise have been happening. But why don't you give us a little background first?
Well, thank you, Alan. It's a great honor to be here, and you know, it's true. I think transportation touches everybody's life in Minnesota, and I've been at this now in this new position. Government's new for me. But I've been in the job since January, and early on the governor said, Commissioner, I'd like you to travel around Minnesota and meet people and talk about transportation and most importantly, to listen. So I've been doing that, and been hearing a lot of stories, and it's true. Transportation is in the news because there's always something that's either being built or something that's being planned.
But you were involved in really public transportation, or private transportation, I should say, for many, many years.
Yes.
Including Jefferson Bus Lines.
Right, Jefferson Bus Lines was founded by my grandfather.
Is that right?
In 1919, so I have a great history of transportation in the state of Minnesota. And in fact, those roads were gravel in those days, and it was named after the Jefferson Highway, which was a gravel road that ran from New Orleans all the way to Winnipeg, and our family had the line that started between Brainerd and Minneapolis. So now is in 13 states.
So you naturally gravitated to that.
I did. I had no intention of being involved in the bus business, but I was in New York, and it was struggling, and I came back to spend a year, and the next thing you know, 25 years goes by, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And Jefferson Bus Lines is very interesting because you know, you can hop a bus to Chicago.
Right.
Express buses, though, where you really can get there faster and cheaper.
Well, you know, we've had a strategy at Jefferson that we're just part of an interconnected system that's not just buses, but we connect to airports, trains, transit, both rural and urban, and you know, college, universities and institutions, and so I kind of enjoyed being part of Jefferson because it is a philosophy that's been very helpful for me now that I'm in the public sector and working at the Department of Transportation. I realize how much transportation is about interconnected systems.
And transportation really is such an important part of the life that we have here in Minnesota, of the life really that we have any place. Since Eisenhower started building the transportation system in the 50s and opened up the international highway system, really, what would we do without it?
Well, you know, it is a phenomenal system. I talk about the roads of my grandfather in the 20s. Those are different times, but the railroads played a much bigger role in national transportation, and clearly over the years we've seen airlines expand, airports, and really the interstate system. I mean, this is a generational shift that happened 50 years ago. Now those roads are getting a little bit long in the tooth. We have to take care of the system we have, but it's certainly transformed America. And now in the state of Minnesota, we have interstates, but we also have a pretty robust state highway system and national highway system. So
I did not know. I knew we had a lot of bridges. I did not know that we have 20,000 bridges in this state.
Yes.
That blew me away.
Yes.
But also 140,000 miles of roads.
Right.
In a state that certainly is far from the most populous state, and yet we are right up there. I think the 5th largest highway system in the United States, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true.
I mean, we are a large state, but that really surprised me when I was researching.
Well, we have a very extensive road system in the state of Minnesota, and that partly reflects our agricultural economy early on, and we're not a small geographic state, but we have a lot of roads for the size we are. That 140,000 miles includes really all the lanes, both state and county and municipal roads. There's not all of those are state and national roads. Those are many times local township roads, but they all are part of one system, and that creates quite a burden because we're not the easiest state to be in terms of maintaining roads. We have,
especially as we talk now in December,
right.
An uncommonly cold beginning of December, where we had a bizarre snow that came down as ice and then snow and then ice and then snow, and really, that's all within your aegis.
It is. We have 800 snow trucks deployed around the entire state, and of course they work hand in hand with counties and cities. But getting those trucks out, not just to plow the snow, but to maintain safe, dry pavement. That means a certain amount of salt, certain amount of sand. And at the end of the day, it's trying to maintain safe conditions. And it's remarkable because, frankly, we have snow and we have ice, but we're much better set up to maintain our system safely than other southern states that are actually experiencing ice and snow this week, but they don't have the system we have.
They're lost. They're
Right.
absolutely lost. And
Right.
It's funny, I did a guest teaching job some years ago in Atlanta, and there had been an ice storm about 2 days before
Right.
I went down there. And as we drove in from the airport to the college, Emory University,
Right.
there were hundreds of cars all over the roadways,
Yeah.
just abandoned there. They had no trucks. They had no idea how to handle it. And then, you look at us, and if you get 8 inches of snow, you know that by the next day, everything's going to be working again.
Yesterday was the first day after a large snowstorm, and I drove in a MnDOT van with a group of MnDOT employees from St. Paul to Cambridge. It wasn't a problem at all. So everywhere I go around the state, it's very gratifying because they have stories about the local MnDOT truck station and the personnel that kind of take care of their roads, and so it's the fact that we have facilities around the state makes that possible.
We hear a lot about public employees, but the fact of the matter is that these public employees, the highway department, the transportation people, are very dedicated people who really, really go about their job in a very professional way and really do us all a great service.
Oh, I'm bowled away when I travel around and I talk to not only the professional truck drivers, but frankly, in the summer, they're not plowing snow. They're out repairing guardrails and mowing the lawns and fixing signs. They're
hopefully potholes.
And repairing potholes when they need to, absolutely. And I early on in February of last year, there was a snowstorm, and I thought for some strange reason that might be the last snowstorm of the year, so which is not true. But I ran out to the local truck station in Golden Valley and to convince them that I was the commissioner and would they give me a ride in a snow truck, and they were very kind, and I got a chance to be in the middle of a storm. And
That was a month after you took the job.
A month after I took the job, and I tell you, there was a guy, he was from Trinidad. He says, "I know snow." And he did a great job, and I realized, you know, there's a lot going inside those trucks. I mean, they are measuring the temperature of the air, but the temperature of the road itself. They're knowing when to use a mixture of brine or a little salt or some sand. It's a lot more than just plowing, and they have a great sense of ownership about their route and what they take care of, and so I was very impressed.
And it shows in our roads. Now, one of the things that probably is a big problem for you is to convince people that we need the funding to take care of these roads. And I know that, you know, it's not your job to raise money, but it certainly is your job to send the message out. So has that hit you like a shock?
Well, and I've realized that the citizens of Minnesota deserve to know what I call the arithmetic. And we do have great facts about what it takes to maintain our roads, what it takes to build and to plan for our future roads. And so the governor has been very clear that he recognizes that there is a gap when we look out the next 20 years. Both in taking care of our existing system, but also providing those additional lanes, interchanges, ways that we can be competitive with other regions that Minnesota faces. So I've been traveling around kind of talking about kind of a high level about what we're facing in terms of funding. And I think, you know, I've been really well received. I mean, I think people are very interested in knowing. As I say, it's not my job to advocate, but it's my job to tell the truth and tell where we stand and what we as citizens have to come together and decide how we face our infrastructure.
And people, where do you think the money is going to come from?
Right.
It doesn't fall from the sky. If we use the roads, then let's face it, we have to pay for the roads.
Right.
And I know, for instance, we haven't raised the gasoline tax in this state since I think 1988. And
well, there was
by my arithmetic, that's a lot of years ago.
There was a slight increase in 2008 after, well, remember we had a I-35 bridge fall down in Minneapolis.
Speaking of 20,000 bridges, and yes.
It was a real wake-up call. It was what I would think of as, you know, a bad moment for MnDOT. But they turned it into the best moment for MnDOT because our agency worked on a very innovative design and built a state-of-the-art bridge to replace the old bridge in 14 months. But they had the benefit of some great federal funds to make that happen.
But it's still a wonderful bridge, the new bridge.
The new bridge is a tremendous, we learned a lot in building that bridge, how we can do things quickly, be smart about the design, build it to last a lot longer.
Coming out of a tragedy. Which really portend well for the future.
But what woke us up to is to really inspect the bridges, and what was frightening is that there were some bridges that inspectors were looking at that were in worse shape than that bridge that fell down. So there was legislation next year, and it was a gubernatorial override, but it was probably one of the best things that Minnesota could do was to provide just a few cents where it gave the state an opportunity to issue bonds and do a lot of repair and do the funds for some new bridges.
Where else are the revenues going to come from?
It
has to
come from dedicated funds
of some sort of.
Right.
And, you know, those of us who drive have to recognize also at the particular time that we're filming this, gas is really at a low for the last 4 or 5 years.
Well,
we're not paying $4 for gas. We're paying a little under $3 for gas if we're lucky.
Well, the irony is, and Alan, you just said it exactly right, gas tax is a fixed fee which doesn't go up or down with the price of gas. I mean, the fact that gasoline is now not $4, it's closer to $3, the gas tax stays constant depending on how much gas is sold. So when the price of gas goes up, the funds that goes to the state highway system doesn't go up as well.
Right, it stays the same.
And in fact, over time, we know that part of our funding challenge is that the fixed gas tax doesn't keep up with the costs of construction, the cost of all the materials it takes, and the people over a great period of time. So the purchasing power of gas tax just has really not kept pace.
And I think we're at that point again, and I'm not going to ask you because I don't want you to get political, but I have no hesitation about getting political because I am the resident curmudgeon and I'll take on anybody. The fact of the matter is we need to raise the gas tax a few cents, and we have to take that message to the legislature if we want to maintain these roads, if we want to maintain, for instance, the pathways to tourism, that is the second biggest product of the state. I mean, we have agriculture and then we have tourism.
And
we've got to get people here and they have to be able to get someplace easily.
And I think it makes a difference when you travel north and you see some of our pavements are not doing so well. We rank, and we're not proud of it, we rank 38th among all the states in some of our pavement quality. And it is simply the arithmetic of spending the money to repave. 50% of our pavements are over 50 years old. I mean, this is, during the 60s when there was a great boom in transportation and we were building the interstate system. They're not meant to last forever. Roads have to be repaved. They have to be, in many cases, rebuilt. And it's like any other asset. If we have our house, I'd love to get a new kitchen and build the porch, but sometimes you have to fix the hole in the roof. And
that's about the size of it. And the fact of the matter is that these patchwork fixes really aren't the answer. What we really have to do is take a roadway, segment out a portion of it and say, well, the new road is going to go in here, and do it as we have done, for instance, in some of the roads recently.
And we know that transit plays a role as part of the system, so we think that's an interconnected system. We know that roads and some of our transit ways take a great way to take some pressure off of our interstates and our highways, because people can ride either buses or light rail and trains. And so we kind of look at it, the big picture, that what's the best way to invest taxpayer funds to make it most efficient, but it does take revenue and these dedicated...
And to make it most permanent, yes.
Right.
So that we can go 50 years from now and say, oh,
Right.
the roads are 50 years old, but boy, we got another 50 years out of them.
We did it right.
And we've got to do that. There is one political party that as soon as you say raising taxes, starts to hyperventilate and get hysterical. I won't mention their name, Republicans, but in any event, they have to recognize that we have to do these things for the good of all the people. And it's necessary for us to maintain our status as a cutting-edge state, which we are.
Which we are. We are the 5th fastest growing economy in the nation. We've just seen how our economy is producing some great results, and we want to keep it that way. But I think, Alan, that transportation has always traditionally been a very bipartisan kind of area of government.
And hopefully it will stay that way.
And we want to keep it
Yes.
to say, let's follow the arithmetic, let's do the right investment, there's returns on that investment. And so we at Midnet work with all sections of the state and all districts and all political folks. I mean, frankly, being part of the Transportation Finance Advisory Committee, there were Republicans and Democrats and Greater Minnesota, urban, metro. We had an economist from the Federal Reserve. At the end of a year, and I was a private citizen on that committee at that time, and I was amazed. We had private sector representation, and in the course of the year, there was 100% alignment and agreement that there was a gap in our transportation funding.
And that's the way it should be.
Right.
Right. A good friend of mine who was a really dedicated legislator is Senator Jim Carlson.
Yes.
And Jim's been here many times. One day he came in, and after the 35 bridge collapsed, and he plunked a piece of concrete down on the table. And I said, "What is that?" And he said, "That's from the Lafayette Bridge. And if we don't fix it pretty soon, that one's going to go down."
Right.
And Jim has, at that time, he was on the Transportation Committee and has been very outspoken in our need for transportation money.
Well, I've got to know him this past year, and he's still on the Transportation Committee and plays a great leadership role in terms of advocating for common sense investments. And I've really enjoyed his history and interest. You know, the Lafayette Bridge is under construction now. Thank goodness that we had the funding, but now we're running out again, and that's the challenge. Of course, we just had a ribbon cutting of the Hastings Bridge. I mean, had that not been redone, I think MnDOT would have had to severely restrict the weights or even close that bridge. And we just opened this new, incredibly beautifully designed bridge that will last 100 years. It's lasting 100 years because we use stainless steel, we have some great engineering, we made it at less cost to do a better job. So I think those are the kind of projects we ought to be thinking about.
Yeah, that's what we have to look at down the road.
Right.
Now, isn't it interesting that railroad travel really petered off to a great degree? And all of a sudden, in fact, when Tim Pawlenty was still a legislator, he and I went back and forth on light rail. He was opposed to the light rail. I was very much in favor of it. He said it's going to be a money loser. I said give it a chance. However, he was governor by the time and that it was completed. He cut the ribbon. I wasn't even invited to
that's one of the great ironies.
But such is politics.
Well, you know, it's interesting.
Now we're bringing in light rail from St. Paul. I mean, these are things, and I travel Hiawatha quite a bit, certainly going to Twins games from Egan and things like that.
Sure.
These are so essential. And now we have the Union Depot where heavy rail is going to be coming through once again.
Right.
And we've gone full circle. I lived here for a couple of years. I don't want to tell you how long ago, but in the 50s.
Yeah.
And we had streetcars.
Yes.
My first experience here was getting off a streetcar in January, a block from where my parents lived, and almost freezing to death to find their house. Now streetcars are being talked about as coming back, so everything seems to go full circle, doesn't it?
It seems to, and I you know, what's interesting is that now I think there's a growing consensus that there's different modes of transit, roads, and bicycles, sidewalks, all kind of are part of a larger kind of interconnected puzzle. And it's interesting to have the chambers of commerce from both St. Paul and Minneapolis advocating for transit investments. That might have happened, you know, 10 years ago, but I think now they recognize that there actually is a smart investment and a return on that investment, and that if we ignore our infrastructure, business cannot prosper. So I think it's both for our quality of life, our prosperity, and the environment, and these are areas that Minnesotans truly care about, and so I think I feel very optimistic.
Good, and obviously you're really enjoying what you're doing, and you can feel the enthusiasm as you speak, and isn't that exciting to have somebody in a job who's really enthusiastic and excited about it?
Well, you know, transportation's in my blood, absolutely, and even though I'm a genetic bus guy, I've really appreciated working with all modes, and mostly because it affects our citizens and people's lives. I care about cities, the vitality of the activity, but I love the greater Minnesota, the beautiful lakes and pristine areas that we have in this state, and it's all supported by transportation. We've tweaked the vision statement for MnDOT, and not to say that the old vision statement was bad, and we still respect safety, and we still are developing innovation, but we now have a vision statement which I think better positions MnDOT for what it really is, and that is a to maintain a multimodal system that maximizes the health of our people, our environment, and our economy. Transportation, and I think Minda, we're here to help support what Minnesotans really care about. We're not an end in itself. We're really the means from which people can enjoy what we have.
And looking ahead to do it in a most cost-effective and modern way,
right,
using technology that didn't exist 50 years ago.
It's amazing. I think we might say, in a transportation revolution. When you think about how millennials, younger, think about getting around. I mean, when I was 16, and it's getting to be, so that was a while ago, I couldn't wait to get my driver's license. In fact, I went to get my test in the morning, not in the afternoon. I wanted to get into a car and drive it. Now I have teenage kids, and they'd would rather not drive. They would rather text with their iPhone and or their smartphone.
I see that a lot. Befuddles me because I was in the same situation at 16, and I was so excited with my father's station wagon,
yeah,
and that I whipped into the high school and took the whole side of the car off. I was afraid to go back and tell him about it, but
you weren't alone. I think
he took it pretty well. It's
yeah. Well, but times are changing, and I think we clearly think about safety. But I think millennials have a lifestyle that is interested in being with transit. Some of the nice ride bikes we have in our cities are ways to kind of get around and then get on a light rail or a bus. We're finding this car to go that is new in Minneapolis now.
Yeah, they had that in some of the other cities. It worked out well.
It works out well. I have a card in my pocket. I haven't used one yet. You can put the card on the dash of on the window of a car, and then it opens up, and I can take it one way and drop it off at a meter, and just leave it. Close the door, and I'm done. You know,
it's very and who knows what's really around the corner.
Who knows what's coming?
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah. Well, it's really, there's so much more that I have wanted to talk to you about. Well, obviously, going to ask you back here.
I'd love to come back
in a short period of time, and continue this, because I want to talk about how much we pay in taxes that goes to transportation as opposed to what we pay for our cable and things like that.
Right.
And our cell phones.
Right.
We're paying a lot more there and getting a lot less out of them than we are out of our transportation.
10 cents a gallon equals to maybe $67 a year for an average driver. So it's not a lot.
We've been talking with Charlie Zelle,
yes,
our Commissioner of Transportation, and I really appreciate it. We are going to have him back shortly. We'll arrange that. And I want to give a shout out to our volunteers today, because in this bad weather we had a few people who were ill, who couldn't make it, but Mary Dahlke has been just a backbone of our organization for years. And we have volunteers from MCTC, Jarrett, who is sitting, actually directing today, Jarrett Braun, and Scott Miller, who's on graphics, and James Freeman, who's been in here handling cameras, and we couldn't do it without them. So thank you, and thank you for watching us.
Thank you so much, Alan. Great pleasure.
Okay. They'll run the credits through us, but the
yeah.